Great. Well, I'm happy to be here. I don't know how many of you know IDC, but for those of you that don't, we're one of the three large kind of technology market research firms. In fact, we're one of the guys that provides the ongoing shares in our marketplace where growth is occurring and where it's not occurring. So what I want to talk to you about today, oh, yes, you go. Let's start with the poll. Right, exactly. So first, can everyone go to your app and tell us whether your sales model is direct, channel, or both? You know, this is very consistent. Overall, I'm in the IDC Channels and Alliances group, and I actually run the infrastructure channels group, which is everywhere from infrastructure as a channel, as a service, to hardware, everything in between, including telco. And what we see is exactly what's on this chart, that most organizations today are both direct and indirect. And the reason for this is no one company can do it all. You have to work with experts to really accomplish what the end customer is demanding today, which is custom tailored applications or solutions that are a complex array of many different products and services. So the reason this is becoming so complex is what IDC calls the third platform. The third platform we've been tracking, believe it or not, for 10 years now. And it's become really the focus of what's happening in technology today. The core of the third platform is cloud, mobile, social, and big data. But really what is accelerating the impact of the third platform and adding immense complexity to what's going on is the blue layer above that, which is next-gen security, augmented reality, IoT, cognitive AI or advanced analytics, robotics, and 3D printing. When you start having all these elements, every solution becomes more complex. And then it gets worse when you start looking at by industry, because every industry has their own little elements that are very, very specific to that industry. And guess what? If you're in healthcare, you need a certain set of things. So there is no single company that can do it all, right? So you have to figure out what you're good at, and then leverage other world-class organizations. For licensing, Gemalto. Right? Don't try to do it yourself. Leverage what you do well and then bring in other people. This is where channel comes in, both at the strategic alliance standpoint, big one-to-one relationships, but also one-to-many, where you have channel experts that know all elements of what's going on. So how important is the third platform? Well, it's growing at an increasing rate. Every time we do this, the third platform growth is higher, and the second platform, or the older technologies, are declining at an increasing rate. So this positions it, you can't do nothing. You have to move forward now, and as a service is really the key. So why is this? This is being driven by the end customer. The end customer is saying, guess what? I need a particular solution. I don't care what boxes are involved. I don't care what applications are involved. I want this particular outcome. If I don't get that outcome, I'm not happy. I'm going to move elsewhere. And because I'm doing everything as a service, guess what? I'm no longer hanging around. So we did a survey, and this is a little different than what was done previously in the last session. This is just amongst line of business respondents, and it is 3,000 respondents, and it is amongst line of business. So that's everything but IT, right? And this is something we track on an annual basis with interim surveys. So the bottom line, when you talk to line of business, who, by the way, 75% of all IT spending is influenced by line of business. So the first thing is 66%. You got to pick 3 different reasons why you were digitally transforming. The top one was to improve our customers' experience. Remember, you're not talking to operations, you're not talking to IoT necessarily, you are talking to line of business, 66%. The next was to make sure that they sustain or achieve a competitive advantage. And the other one, which I think actually underlies the other 2, is to create new business models to meet those customers' expectations and to be competitive, right? So I think that the world has really changed. You have to move now. And in fact, the impact on the channel, which has been going on for a number of years, as you can see from this slide, for 14 years now, we've been asking as many as 1,000 partners, where does your revenue come from? Is it from resale? Is it from your own IP? And then we actually go into laborious detail on each one of these. But at the highest level, the amount that's resale has really gone down. And the key now is their own IP. So what's happening is partners are working towards those end customer outcomes, helping provide those. So these partners are becoming more and more specialized so that they really understand what that end customer wants. So, you know, there's no such thing as the horizontal partner anymore. And if there are, they're not long for their life as a partner. They really have to figure out what they're good at, focus in on that, do it well, and then leverage other organizations to complete a solution to be completely tailored to their end customers. And they can't do it one-off every time. They have to have a higher and higher percentage of what they do is reusable and scalable.
Let me jump in here before we go forward, because this was important to us.
Yeah.
Because we sell to channel partners, right? And so you can imagine, we come from a hardware world. So you see the sharp displays here. We're in the B2B group, Yaz and I. We'll give you a little background about where we are in a little bit. But we saw this happening. And someone before was talking about, well, what happens if you do nothing? Well, we see exactly what happens if, could you advance? We see exactly what happens if you do nothing, is that you end up stranded.
That's all right.
Right? And so you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. And so that really, for us, was what stimulated the change, right? It was purely a question of survival and being relevant to our channel partners. You know, before there was the question that was asked around to the group here is, how many of you sell through channels? And, you know, it was a high to do both, a high percent. I think the follow-up question that popped in my head the minute I saw that result is, what's the revenue mix between your direct and your channel organization?
Exactly.
Because that lets me know where you're really focused and where you spend your energy.
Yeah.
You know, Yaz, you want to?
Yes. So Vince and I are from Sharp Electronics, and we are a $23 billion global company. But as Vince alluded earlier, you know, our legacy is from consumer side, but we both work in the B2B business. And this is one example of a product right here. You know, you're looking at the monitor right now. But also another big piece of business is a copier business. And copier business is a mature business, but also it's a cash cow business for us. And the channel partners we sell those copier through, you know, they're going through their own transformation. So our end customer is, you know, changing faster than we are, and some of the partners are changing faster than we are. So we have no choice but to change ourselves. So, you know, this is one of our financial analyst conference presentation that we used about 6 months ago, and that this came from Japan. But, you know, we call it, you know, it's a smart transformation. So appliances instead of calling ourselves appliance division, we're just going to call, smart appliances. Instead of calling ourselves B2B division, we're going to start calling ourselves, the smart office and smart solution divisions moving forward. So the way we're trying to transform ourselves, when we try to sell this panel, right, it's a widget. There's nothing to it. At the end of the day, in today's fiercely competitive world, the competitive lever we can pull is just pricing. But now when we combine this panel with copier, with all the networks that attach to the these devices that company use our products for, we're gonna try to put a context and story behind it. So rather than try to sell a widget, we wanted to actually sell something that make our end customer productive using our products. So in order to make that transition from manufacturing a widget to selling a story, we need to have a Bob's presentation was awesome because as I was hearing his presentation, it's almost like mirroring our background because there are so many silos within our organization before. The TV business, the panel business, the copier business, they own their own sphere. They own their own rules and processes, and there are thousands of policies and processes and tools that existed before. Now we needed to combine that, commonize it, and have a single platform so we can now start to telling actual compelling, relevant story to our customers.
When I look at this slide, I think of what Eddie said about price and value. A hardware, a box as we call it, is something that tangible you can sell and it has a price in the market. When you move to a services-based business, you're starting to sell value. And that's what you have to focus in on. When we looked for this change, you need to think about in our organization that we represent the US sales and marketing subsidiary of a parent corporation. And we're driving for this change. And so we actually started our transformation project before this came out from the top management, from the organization. If you could go forward. And you can see here, this is when we looked at the Gemalto project, what were our goals? But keep in mind that this project is part of the bigger project of being able to deliver a different type of goods and services to our customers because that's what they're looking for from us. And it's important for us to stay relevant to them. So first it was the strategy, right? That was key to us. And we have to change our business model. And you can see I mapped them to Pam's research so you can see how they correlate. The first two were dead on. Business model flexibility and customer experience. Earlier they talked about prioritizing. And so for us, we sell mostly through a channel. Even our direct operation, we kind of treat as a channel in its own because it's a separate group within the organization, separate group of relationships. So we saw their experience in buying, purchasing, and consuming the products from us as being a top priority. We have visions, down the road, and our long-term roadmap is to extend that out to the end customer. But the relationship today that we have direct is mostly with the channel and then the channel with the end customer. And then from an IT operation, and this is the part that Bob was chatting about a lot, was the efficiency. And that's why I was interested to know who drives it within an organization, because everybody's organization is different. But I bet you today, people are going to get up here and they're going to say the exact same things about why they're doing it, what are the hot buttons that you have to do, which is all great. It's great information. But at least from our perspective, the hard part is to actually get it done inside your organization. And that's where you kind of have to think about, which is the group inside your organization that can drive this? Who owns it? In the case of Bob's, that was nice. It was operations. Yaz and I looked at each other at that time, and that's not our operations department. They're very good at what they do, but change isn't that's not the way they're structured. And then lastly, from the product group, we need to know how people are using our devices. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do it using technology that's out there. But just like in operations or in IT, you don't want people reinventing the wheel, and you want a similar customer experience. The same thing on the product side. The licensing system that you deliver has to be able to give you the feedback in how are people actually using my product. It's not just releasing and enabling the capability, but it's also giving me back that telemetry and saying that, A, B, or C functionality is actually being used, but D, E, and F isn't.
Yeah, it comes down to life cycle management. One of the keys we've seen is, we have this loop that is called the customer success loop. And once a customer has, bought your service, nowadays you actually don't make revenue until they use it, right? So, and you want to make sure that they continue to use it, they become an advocate for you, which then helps you get more customers, right?
Yeah. The other key is partnering within the organization. Like, Yaz and I here, we have full-time jobs, and then we have this job.
Exactly.
And we kind of partnered on it together, and it really helped out because we bring very different perspectives to the team. And I think what's also important is that inside the organization, we bring different relationships. Right. And so that helps you drive that change as you're, essentially negotiating. I think Bob said it earlier about selling. I read a statistics the other day that, the U.S. economy, I think 65%, I can't remember exactly, are in direct sales roles, but 100% of people employed have to sell.
Exactly.
And that's the truth, because you're always selling something to someone, whether it's you need someone to, babysit your kids. Hey, can you pick up my son at soccer tomorrow? You're kind of selling because you want something from them. Maybe you don't see it that way, but, in turn, you might do something. But that's the key here, is that, the partnering at least worked for us.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about channels. A little different. In the introduction, Ariella mentioned that I was interested in channels. Frankly, I wasn't interested in speaking about channels. I was interested in speaking with other people that sold through channels so that I could learn something. A slight twist there in the presentation, but we'll let that slide. So anyway, I'll be around the rest of the day, so if any of you do sell through channels, please come track me down, because I have a hunger for information. Thank you. So this is a look at kind of how our channels are. And I mentioned earlier that we have a mix. On the what we call the VS, which is visual displays and visual solutions side, we sell through an indirect channel, and they see us as a pure, what's your price? Don't sell me any kind of added value. I need a good product with certain specs, and I need it now. Good distribution, good return policy, pure distribution play. In the middle is probably the core of our business, which is independent dealers. And they sell primarily our office equipment products and, a little bit of some of our displays, interactive whiteboards and what have you, that kind of technology that's in there. But they're the classic example of what Pam was talking about earlier, where, 10 years ago, the hardware vendor was dominant, and that relationship was everything. Yep. Today, we're finding out that it's not. That's one transformation. And the other transformation that we're seeing in the channel is that 10 years ago, $10 million was big for that channel player. Today, the average is about $250 million. So what does that tell you? It tells you consolidation, right, exactly, aggregation. Yep. In the industry. But there's also diversification going on, where they are becoming essentially IT providers, right? Why? Because the hard copy industry is going away. I mean, I'm looking.
They're becoming specialists.
In key areas, right?
Exactly.
So especially the non-resale portion of that donut chart we saw earlier,
yep.
We see more and more professional services being sold through the channel, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's important. And then we have our SBS organization, which is Sharp Business Systems, right? That's our direct operation. And they sell both, core product lines in the B2B space. But even with them, they sell a mix of other services that they get from other providers because they have to compete. And it's really about competing for, in their case, a greater share of the IT budget, right? Like we were talking about earlier, when you go in and you're selling to a CIO, the CIO wants to know that you're going to take care of the service that they need. But they don't want a different provider for all different components, different aspects. They're looking for someone that can fill a broader range of their needs because it's the quality of the service. And also you see the license model changing, where I'm not buying a piece of hardware, I'm not buying a piece of software. But it's not only licensing, it's also moving to, per user, or per seat type models.
Yep.
And so that changes the dynamic of kind of what's going on. So that's the difference across the channels we sell. But we also have a difference within the channels that we sell, particularly in the middle part, which was our copier dealer, right? What we call business technology dealers, the core of our business. And frankly, I would say even within our SBS organization, because it's regionally diverse, is that you see some people that, they're pulling us. They're calling us and saying, hey, why aren't you guys doing this today? You should be doing this. This is valuable to me. And then it's our obligation to respond to that. There's others that want to go. They see the demand from their customers, but they're kind of asking us to get there. And of course, the channel itself not only is consolidating, but there's also new entrants coming in all the time. And so that's important for us to be attractive to them as you're trying to grow your business. So that's kind of the dynamics that we see going on within the channel.
Okay. Okay. So the next polling question is, what tools would your channel find valuable? Wait, let me do it again. What tools would help your channel provide value in the products to services transformation? I finally got it out. 1, self-service for product activation, usage measurement of product features, renewal management tools, or all of the above? Yeah, interesting. Okay, overwhelmingly, all of the above. What's interesting is renewal management becomes lesser, even though if we'd asked this question a few years ago, that might have been the top answer, right? So now all of those things, and probably several other areas, I would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we saw, it's interesting. If you go back, I don't know if you can bring back those results, but the 7% for self-activation, I think it was, of it.
Yeah.
For us, that was the biggest place where we got positive feedback. Like on this transformation journey that we're on, I can't remember, I think Shlomo put up the slide earlier. Are you in the planning phase?
Yep.
My answer was we're in all of them.
Yeah,
right?
Depends on which area.
Right,
Yeah,
depends
yeah.
on which area, which affiliate, which parent,
Exactly.
where in the organization you fit.
Yeah.
But we just started this journey. We came here a year ago and we were just fresh off having signed up with Gemalto for the first project, if you will. And then a year in now, we just kicked it off. And the place where we got the first impact, and I think this is particularly valuable, and we'll talk about it later, because we use a theory that is, you sell the chain or the vision, let me rephrase that. You show the vision, but what you sell is the first link.
Yep.
Right? Because you got to deliver something valuable, something tangible that gives confidence for the reinvestment. Right? That is key. And for us, that self-service for portal activation, which we called our enhanced partner portal, was the key thing that we could deliver to our channel and has allowed us to generate that positive buy-in that is given senior management the encouragement. Because even though senior management, we have a C-level sponsor, which is our COO, but remember, it's the CEO of a subsidiary, not the parent company.
Right.
But even COOs have currents that they swim against. And so our job is to provide them with the positive metrics to drive change.
Was that almost like a proof of concept, so you could prove it with one particular project and then you can roll it out to more?
It's a combination.
Yeah.
The proof, we didn't do it as a proof of concept. The feedback validated the direction that we're on. So it's a slightly nuanced change. If you step forward a little bit, we can talk a little bit more about some of the transformations that we're on. Well, that's fine. So the punchline's gone because there you go.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So you saw earlier, I have to talk about it. Go forward, please.
Okay.
So since then we'll come back to this.
Yep.
So this is the way we see ourselves, right? We're the proverbial salmon swimming against the current. And so, people put it on earlier. What's the current? The current is today's business, right? There's quarterly deadline, monthly, we live in a month-to-month world and quarters, right? And so you have
salespeople need to make.
I want to say,
Right.
9/10 of the organization are focused on delivering in the short term.
Right.
And you're trying to drive, I come from the product side, and so we see the change in the landscape. Yaz comes from the strategy slide, so there's a natural synergy there, right? And we're looking for partners, and we found partners in operations, and we found partners in IT. But that's the issue and the struggle for us, is that we're going against the current, trying to change the organization. And the punchline was on the next slide, which is, you got to watch out, because when you change an organization, you have established power structures in place, right? That is today's business, today's culture. And so, the way to do it again is to sell that link. Yeah. We kind of went out of order because the slides popped up, but let's go back to the discussion slide.
It's a light press, Pam.
Yeah.
So here are some areas of transformation that IDC has seen across all organizations, whether you're a big vendor, you're a little channel provider. These are areas that you have to invest in and move through to kind of become what you need to be competitive in today's market. The first one, of course, is moving from the second platform to the third platform. The next, which I think is really a key and is actually kind of the foundation for everything else, is figure out what you're good at, focus on that, and then find the other people that can help you complete the solution to get the end customer what they're really looking for. The other is, and we've already talked about this a little bit, is who's the customer. When it's IT, they have their own approach. They know what their architecture is, and they only need maybe a box here, a little bit of something there. But when you're selling to the line of business, guess what? They're truly looking for a particular solution. And on top of that, they probably want a single invoice every month. And Vince brought this up earlier. They don't want to have 4 different suppliers for this solution. They want a single neck to ring, as you hear, I've heard many times from partners, and they want a single invoice. So this becomes really important. When you have to sell directly to a line of business person, you really have to change your focus. You are no longer talking bits and bytes. You're talking domain knowledge for that particular business and that particular functional area. The sales motion really changes. It's not an upfront deal. It's the transition to a recurring revenue model is hard. A couple years ago, I used to always show this slide where you saw, the deal. They would have these ups and downs of what they're, had to close by the end of the month, by the end of the quarter. So revenue was up and down like this. But the deals were like $1 million. They were big. Now, when you go to recurring revenue, you're down to a small amount. So there's this kind of trough that you have to cross over. So what we've seen with channel partners is help them use their current traditional business to fund the new business, often creating a separate subsidiary, a separate group that allows them to bridge that gap. Then the time horizon. It's so tempting to stay focused in on the current month or the current quarter, but really the long-term investment is the key. Marketing, you have to move from traditional to digital, because more and more, when you're talking to customers, you're talking to customers that have very specific needs. They look for their information in very specific areas, and it's often social media. If you're not on social media, guess what? You're probably not even being considered. So bottom line is you have to do that. The next we've pretty much covered, because to do a complete solution, a specific outcome, you have to do more than you did before. You can't just resell. You have to have all the elements pulled together. You have to work with other people. And the competition has changed. You got all these millennials and even younger coming in and with no constraints, no heritage they have to worry about. So the competitive situation is very different. This presents a very complex environment.
Yeah, it's interesting. Eddie talked about earlier about you don't, well, we believe you have customers and clients, but I think the way you said it right is that you develop an audience.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the key perspective, because they're fickle. Right? And when you think of audience, you think of that mobility, right? And so your constant engagement, I think, is really what you were after. And when we think about it inside of an organization, we kind of do the pancake, I call it. You know, product sits at the bottom because I'm a product guy, so for me, that's the foundation. The next is IT operations infrastructure, right? And that's where a partner like Gemalto comes in, you know, and Pam was talking about specializing. So that's not an area we're going to specialize in. We want kind of a best of breed to come in there and help us out. But an area that's often, I think, underlooked is the sales side, right? The key question is, can your current sales organization deliver this product or this service, this new business model, right? Because how are they getting compensated today? What's in that sale? If that sales rep is selling a big box and their commission has a lot of zeros after it, right? And they're guaranteed that, well, not guaranteed, but that's what they get at the end of the month. And then you come in with a service type with 1 zero after it, or maybe 2 zeros after it, it's just not going to make it to the customer, right? And so that, for me, is key, and that applies to any organization, regardless of how you sell, direct or indirect. The last challenge for the indirect organization is the channel, right? And how do you bring them along with you? And that's kind of like how we approach this transformation. As I said earlier, I don't know why we're up here, because we just started. You know, we're a year in, so I feel like we're nowhere. The only thing we can do is we're fresh from the trenches, so we can share that story with you.
Yeah. Exactly. So we've already covered the next 2 slides. So that kind of takes us to the wrap-up.
Yeah. So we talked about it earlier. This is the biggest, struggle. It's within the organization, right? So I don't know your organizations, but it's a feudal estate, if you will. Not futile, feudal. Because people are holding on to their own areas, right? And so there's a lot of politics involved in change. And I think the thing that changes politics is the realization that survival's on the line, right? And maybe it's a little over dramatic, because at the end run, you're okay for a few years out or whatever it is, but it's being able to transform with the way the industry's going. The same thing with the power shift. There's people that are never going to believe you. You know, they don't see the light. And you need to find people within the organizations that do see the light, because it's not a question of having one champion. It's a question of having a group of champions, right? A collective or an audience, both external and internal. And then it's not going to happen in a day. We're, as I said, a year in. And I heard it from someone else, and I'm going to share it again, and I encourage you to share it out there, is show the chain, sell the link. Because you got to tell people where you're going, but you got to deliver value each step of the way. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen.
Just to insert there, I think one of the keys that we've seen is once a company does a transformation, they're like, oh, I'm done. No, there's no such thing anymore as a sustainable competitive advantage. It's only transitory. So I think it's absolutely critical that once you get on this treadmill, you're on this treadmill, and you have to continuously invent and change and stay on the cutting edge.
Yeah, I think Pam's absolutely right. Competitive advantage is not a thing. It's a moment in time.
Exactly.
And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And the last thing is that, you have to start. And
Yep.
in our case, from the product side, we were advocating this change. And it took the leap of faith from our COO, who for cost reasons took the leap. Not product reasons or vision reasons, but that was enough to get us started on this journey. And it's complex, you know. It's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of work. You know, the Gemalto team knows that, as they've worked with us. And I have to give them kudos because they've been patient, and our organization is, you know, complex. And so working with us over time to deliver that value, I think is the top thing that you can look for in a partner. And when we approach our channel, we want to be perceived that way, as delivering value with you and being patient with you and helping you in your journey through the transformation process.
Great.
I think that's it.
Yeah. And we already have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Any questions? Ansgar.
Vince, if I'm a partner of yours, let's say in 3 years, what would be the tangible changes kind of that you want me to have seen, yeah, in 3 years, where I say, this has really changed in my collaboration with Sharp or how I go to market or so?
So I would start with where Sharp's going to go, and then I would talk about the channel player.
Yeah.
So today, the channel player primarily sees us as a hardware provider, right? The way we do business with you and the way we support you and the other relationships we bring are important to our channel providers. But that's the change that we need to do inside our organization, is realize that, you know, I'd say our revenue mix, just rounded, is probably 95% hardware, 5% software, right? To generalize it. I would say in 3 years, I don't know if we can flip that, but I would like to see it where the majority is not hardware. It's a service of some type, whether that be licensed or professional, right, in nature. And so I think that is where the journey is going to occur. And then to the channel partner, 2 things. One is we didn't just drop it on you, right, and say, here is the new thing, the new service, but we helped you change your organization. And we have to do that by changing our organization. The people that are supporting you, the people that are calling you, whether it be in a pre-sales, pro-sales, support perspective, I think their way of working has to change.
Yeah. So Vince's chart about, remember the bell curve? Even within the channel, there are leaders, visionaries, and there are laggards. So, you know, it's not like we have a solution to do the implementation. We constantly learning from you know, our channel partners how we going to do this. Actually, one of the key success factor, if I call it, you know, sustain ourselves to get up to this point was support from some of our advocates from channel partners. We were not only able to find the support from within, you know, COO, but also some support from key customers who are, you know, copier dealers, constantly giving us feedback on the pilot. And you know, just teaming up with internally, externally, finding those allies is a significant, you know, success.
Yeah, it's interesting because that goes back to the chart of where we were, right? In some areas we're planning, then we executed, and then we're already getting feedback, so we're already adjusting. Right? Yeah.
And it goes the other way. You guys have to enable a lot of your partners that are not yet making the change, but investing in those partners that have the most likelihood of succeeding in making the change. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah. So it's bi-directional.
I think there's a question in the back there.
Do you think subscription models, do you think channel partners think subscription models are a risk to future revenue?
Yeah.
And that it allows you to contact the customers directly, the end users directly?
So that's an interesting challenge. Yes and no. So yes, right? Why yes? Because they own the relationship with the end customer. There's no question about it. No, because it's expensive to have people sell, right? One person has to make so much in revenue a month, blah, 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 blah. There are services and value that we can deliver to that end customer that is going to keep them engaged with us without having the channel do anything, and then we can credit the channel through our own system, right? And so for me, that is where they're buying into it, because they want to go out and capture the new opportunity, right? So there's hunting and grazing, kind of, farming, if you will. And so the farming and the upkeep can be automated. And so that's where the reach of the vendor partners with the channel player, so the channel guy can focus on the hunting.
Communication is key. We need to be upfront about it, because if we don't talk about those things upfront, explicitly, then always our channel partners have second guessing what the Sharp is trying to do.
And the other thing that's going on is that people are becoming like you were talking about the third platform, right? What's the third platform? It's mobile and cloud, right? Social and everything else. But the key point in there is that people are giving up information about themselves and about their relationships for convenience. Yeah. And so the idea of not owning that information from a channel provider is becoming more mainstream, because they're already doing it in their personal space or in their business space. Right? So I think those two things help out. I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are too.
Well, we already see it as, I'm actually in the engineering department, but we already see it that it's going to be a challenge. We're investigating
the mic.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry about that. We're looking into possibly using subscription services, and already our steering team is concerned that it might be an issue with our channel partners. So we're already, obviously, we're going to have to message it correctly to.
That's it. I think your steering team's right on. It is a concern, but it's not a blocker, right? It just needs to be handled correctly. And I think it's something that, in your plan, you have to have how are you going to approach it? How are you going to get thought leaders in your channel? Things like that to help you address it.
Right.
Can you speak more about self-service activation? You mentioned it earlier. As we sell through our channel, and our partners would love to activate themselves so that subscription periods don't start until they activate it for the customer. Have you guys done that, and how did you build it?
Well, we did the link with our SAP system, right? So the purchase occurs separate, right? This is where you really would need an IT and operations guy. I'll do my best to do it justice, right? Then through the interface that we build, I guess I learned the language and entitlement, right? All right, pat myself on the back. Is created inside what we call the partner portal. And then it's kind of sitting in a bucket, if you will, that's kind of the channel guys, their inventory. And so before they activate it, they have to move it over into a customer's bucket, right? And so that's what triggers the clock on it. I will say in our implementation, though, the billing occurs once it's received by the channel partner, right? Because that's delivery. Yeah, so those two thoughts are separated. And we spent a lot of time on the partner portal. If you're going down that road, I cannot stress enough the effort in understanding your business rules or business logic, and also seeing where you want them to change.
And did you do term licenses that way as well, or only perpetual?
Well, currently we haven't moved to a subscription model through the system. Remember I was saying 95% of my business is hardware? And so what we did was the key revenue piece for us was we have options on hardware that are enabled through a licensing system. And the second part where I said the trigger for the first step was to take cost out. Just like I think it was Bob, we had like 7 or 6 different processes and systems, and on one particular software, if Mary or Sally was out sick, the order just stopped because they were the only ones that knew what to do. And that is just not, we can't work that way, because obviously that's not going to scale, right? So we haven't gotten to that next step, but that is sitting, I can taste it, it's right there. Yeah.
Thank you. One last question before we break for lunch? Thank you, guys. Terrific
pleasure.
session. Thank you so much.